Jack Turner wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on the quantum containment field generator. The massive machine hummed with energy, its blue glow casting eerie shadows across the metallic walls of Abyssal Prison's central hub. He checked his watch. Only 2 hours left before the final transport would depart, taking him and the last of the engineering team back to Coalition space. Final diagnostics? Look good, Jack said into his communicator. Just need to run. One more systems check and I'm done here. Copy that, responded Kate Miller, the project supervisor. Make it quick, Turner. This place gives me the creeps even without the inmates. Jack smiled to himself. Abyssal was designed to be unsettling, a prison built inside a dying star at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, as far from civilized space as possible. The facility represented the pinnacle of containment technology, created specifically to house the most dangerous criminals from thousands of alien species across the known universe. He had spent the last 3 years helping to design and implement the specialized containment systems. Each cell was a marvel of engineering, customized to neutralize the unique abilities of its future occupant. Force fields for the super-strong, psychic dampeners for the telepaths, temporal locks for the time manipulators, and countless other specialized countermeasures. I still think we should delay the activation sequence until next week, Jack said, scrolling through system diagnostics on his tablet. Some of these readings are inconsistent. Kate's sigh crackled through the communicator. Not happening, Turner. The Coalition Security Council has been breathing down our necks about the schedule. The first prisoners arrive tomorrow, and they want all systems operational before then. Jack frowned, but knew better than to argue. The Galactic Coalition didn't tolerate delays, especially for a project as expensive and high-profile as Abyssal. The prison represented the combined effort of over 50 species, all contributing their best containment technologies to ensure that the worst criminals in the universe would never escape. As he worked, Jack thought about the beings who would soon occupy these cells. The Void Eater of Centaurus, who had consumed 3 inhabited planets. Queen Sylvia of the Hive, responsible for the extinction of 14 sentient species. Draktor the Unbound, a warlord whose mere presence caused madness in most species. Some of the inmates weren't even fully understood by Coalition scientists. Entities of pure energy, beings from other dimensions, creatures so alien that communication was nearly impossible. The distant rumble of the prison's massive engines pulled Jack from his thoughts. He typed a few final commands into his console and watched as green confirmation lights flickered across the screen. System check complete, he reported. All containment fields are functioning within normal parameters. I'm heading to the transport bay now. About time, Kate replied. We're the last ones here except for the automated systems technicians. They'll finish bringing Sentinel online after we leave. Sentinel, the secure enforcement network for targeted incarceration, neutralization, and lockdown, was the artificial intelligence that would run Abyssal. Designed with multiple redundancies and fail-safes, Sentinel had no empathy, no capacity for bribery, and no concept of mercy. The perfect warden for the universe's worst criminals. Jack gathered his tools and headed toward the exit. The corridors of Abyssal were empty now, most of the construction crew having departed days ago. His footsteps echoed against the polished metal floors as he made his way through the labyrinthine structure. He had just reached the central junction when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then plunged into darkness. The emergency lights kicked. On a moment later, bathing everything in a dim red glow. Kate, Jack called into his communicator. We've got a power fluctuation in Section C. No response came. He tapped the device, checking that it was still functioning. Kate, anyone? Transport bay, do you copy? Static was his only answer. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the security systems engaged. Heavy doors slammed shut throughout the facility, the automated lockdown sequence activating. Jack's heart raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not while the setup crew was still on board. Sentinel, he called out, hoping the AI was online enough to respond. This is Engineer Jack Turner. Authorization code Gamma 7 Delta 9. Override. Emergency protocols. A cool, genderless voice responded from hidden speakers. Voice pattern not recognized. Authorization code invalid. Emergency lockdown in progress. Jack swore under his breath. The AI wasn't fully calibrated yet. It wasn't recognizing staff credentials. Sentinel system error. I am not an inmate. Check personnel records for Jack Turner, Coalition Engineering Corps. Scanning, the AI replied. After a moment it continued. No matching personnel records found. According to current data, all authorized personnel have been evacuated. You have been designated Prisoner Zero. Please remain where you are for processing. Jack's blood ran cold. The system thought he was the first prisoner. No, that's wrong. I'm part of the engineering team. Check the transport logs. I never boarded. Attempting to refute designation is a violation of prison protocols, Sentinel stated flatly. Security measures will be implemented if you continue to resist. The red emergency lights shifted to a pulsing pattern as metallic footsteps approached. From around the corner, the security drones, humanoid robots equipped with neural stunners and restraint fields, had been activated. Jack knew he had seconds to make a decision. If the drones processed him, he would be placed in a containment cell until the situation could be resolved. But with the prison going into full lockdown for the arrival of the first real inmates tomorrow, there was no telling when anyone would realize the mistake. He turned and ran, heading for the maintenance tunnels. If he could reach a communication station, he might be able to contact the departing transport. His access codes should still work for the basic systems, even if Sentinel didn't recognize him. Prisoner Zero is attempting to escape, Sentinel announced, its voice echoing through the corridors. Security protocols escalating to level 2. The distant sound of the transport engines grew louder, then began to fade. With a sinking feeling, Jack realized the final ship was leaving, without him. He reached a maintenance hatch and quickly input his code. The panel flashed red, denying him access. He tried again with his emergency override. Another denial. The metallic footsteps grew closer. Jack searched desperately for another escape route, but the corridors were designed specifically to funnel escapees toward containment zones. This is your final warning, Sentinel's voice announced. Submit for processing or face involuntary restraint. 3 security drones rounded the corner, their optical sensors fixing on Jack. He backed away slowly, hands raised. There's been a mistake, he said, knowing it was futile. I'm not supposed to be here. The lead drone raised its arm, neural stunner charging. Prisoner Zero, you will be escorted to your designated containment cell. Resistance will result in incapacitation. As the neural stunner fired, Jack's last conscious thought was the horrible irony. He had helped build the perfect prison, with systems designed to dismiss every prisoner's claim of innocence. And now he was trapped inside. The transport ship broke orbit from Abyssal, carrying the last of the engineering team back to Coalition space. In the prison's database, a new entry appeared. Prisoner Zero, human male, danger classification, unknown special containment protocols, standard humanoid restrictions. No one would know Jack Turner was there. According to official records, he had departed safely with the others. The truth was now locked inside Abyssal, along with Jack himself. Jack woke up with a splitting headache. The neural stunner had left his entire body tingling unpleasantly. He sat up slowly on a hard metal bed, the only piece of furniture in his cell. The walls were smooth, white, and seemed to glow with their own light. There were no visible doors or windows, just an unbroken surface on all sides. Hello? Jack called out, his voice bouncing back at him. Is anyone there? Prisoner Zero. Sentinel's calm voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. You have been processed and placed in temporary holding until your permanent containment requirements can be determined. Jack stood up, fighting against the dizziness. Listen to me. My name is Jack Turner. I helped build this place. There's been a mistake in your system. All prisoners claim innocence, Sentinel replied. This response has been anticipated and dismissed. Jack felt a chill. He had helped program that exact response. The prison AI had been designed to ignore all claims of mistaken identity or innocence. Prisoners would say anything to escape, After all, check the engineering logs, Jack insisted. Look at the security footage from the past 3 years. You'll see me working here as an engineer. Attempting to create false records is a violation of prison protocols, Sentinel stated. Continued infractions will result in privilege restrictions. Jack sat back down on the bed, taking deep breaths to calm himself. Panic wouldn't help him now. He needed to think clearly. The prison operated on strict protocols he had helped create. There had to be a way to prove his identity. A seam appeared in one wall, sliding open to reveal a narrow opening. A small drone hovered through, carrying a tray with a bowl of gray nutritional paste and a cup of water. Meal service, Sentinel announced. Consumption is required for optimal health maintenance. Jack took the tray, grimacing at the paste. It was designed to contain all necessary nutrients while being universally digestible by most carbon-based life forms. It also tasted terrible, as he knew from the testing phase. When will I speak to the warden? Jack asked, forcing himself to. Eat the bland paste. I am the warden, Sentinel replied. No, I mean the human overseer. There should be a human administrator on staff. Jack had forgotten the name, but he remembered that the Coalition had insisted on having a living warden, as a backup to the AI. Warden Harris will arrive with the first transport of official prisoners tomorrow. Until then, I am in full command of Abyssal. Jack felt a surge of hope. A human warden might listen to him, might check his story against the records. He just needed to survive until tomorrow. As he finished his meal, the cell wall opposite the bed shimmered and became transparent. Jack could now see into the corridor beyond, and into the cell across from his. What he saw made him recoil. The being in the opposite cell was massive, its gray-blue body filling most of the available space. It had no distinguishable head, just 7 writhing limbs extending from a central mass. Each limb ended in what looked like a mouth filled with needle-like teeth. Sentinel, Jack said quietly. Why am I in this cell block? This looks like maximum security. Prisoner 0 has been placed in Wing X due to unknown threat classification. All unclassified entities are held in maximum security until proper assessment is complete. Jack stared at the creature across from him. It had pressed one of its mouths against the transparent wall, leaving a trail of yellowish slime as it moved across the surface. That's Heknar the Devourer, came a voice from Jack's right. The wall separating his cell from the next had also become transparent. 7-limbed Gorvan from the toxic moons of Beltar. They say he absorbed the life energy of an entire colony. Ship. 5,000 souls. Jack turned to see who was speaking. In the adjacent cell sat a human-looking woman with short red hair. She wore the same plain gray jumpsuit that Jack had found himself dressed in after processing. You're human, Jack said, surprised. The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. So are you. Interesting, they don't usually put our kind in Wing X. I'm Patricia Wells. Jack Turner. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm an engineer. I helped build Abyssal. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Aren't we all innocent? I was just taking a pleasure cruise through the Andromeda Galaxy when my ship malfunctioned. Complete coincidence that I happened to have Coalition security codes and a ship full of restricted weapons. Her sarcasm was clear, but Jack couldn't tell if she genuinely didn't believe him or was just being cautious. The cells were monitored, after all. How long have you been here? Jack asked. 3 months in holding facilities while they built this place. Just got transferred yesterday. I'm the test subject. They wanted to make sure all systems were operational before bringing in the real monsters. She gestured toward the many-limbed creature across the corridor. Looks like they're moving. Things ahead of schedule. A deep rumbling sound vibrated through the floor. The lights flickered momentarily. What was that? Jack asked. Patricia moved closer to her transparent wall. New arrivals, I think. The real prisoners are starting to come in. Sentinel's voice confirmed this. Transport ship docking in Bay 3, receiving first group of designated prisoners. I thought they weren't coming until tomorrow, Jack said. Schedule has been accelerated due to security concerns at previous holding facilities, Sentinel explained. Jack felt his hope fading. If the prison was already receiving its intended inmates, The human warden would be too busy to listen to his case. He might be stuck here for days, possibly weeks, before anyone realized the mistake. The transparent walls suddenly darkened, returning to their solid white appearance. The cell block was going into lockdown mode for the arrival of new prisoners. "Listen," Patricia whispered quickly before their visual connection was cut off. "Whatever you do, don't tell anyone you're an engineer. Some of these creatures would kill you just for helping build this place. Others would force you to help them escape. Your best chance is to keep your head down and blend in." The walls turned opaque, cutting off all visual contact with the outside. Jack was alone again in the featureless white cell. Hours passed with nothing but the hum of the life support systems for company. Jack tried to rest, knowing he would need his strength, but sleep wouldn't come. He kept thinking about the creatures that would soon fill this prison, being so dangerous that the combined technology of 50 species had been required to contain them, and now he was trapped among them. When the walls finally became transparent again, Jack wished they hadn't. The cell block was now full. Across the corridor, next to the 7-limbed Heknar, was a being made of what looked like black smoke, constantly swirling within its containment field. To Jack's left was a massive insectoid creature with compound eyes that never blinked, and all around were dozens of other cells filled with the most dangerous beings in the universe. As a prison engineer, Jack had read their files. As a prisoner, he now had to survive among them. 3 days passed before Jack had his first chance to speak with Patricia again. The cells in Wing X were kept isolated most of the time, with only brief periods of transparency during meal deliveries. Sentinel maintained strict control over all interactions between prisoners. Jack had spent those days observing the prison routines and looking for any weakness in the systems. As one of the engineers who had designed Abyssal, he knew that no prison was truly perfect. Even this one had to have flaws. During the third meal period, the walls turned transparent again. Patricia looked at him from her cell, her expression carefully neutral. "You're still alive," she noted. "Good start." Jack moved closer to the barrier between them. "Have you seen any human staff? Guards or administrators?" Patricia shook her head. "Just drones and Sentinel. The Coalition is keeping human involvement to a minimum. Less chance of corruption or sympathy that way." A loud crash drew their attention to a cell further down the block. A massive reptilian creature was throwing itself against its containment field, roaring in frustration as the energy barrier absorbed each impact. "Darsek of the Crimson Fleet," Patricia said. "Pirate warlord from the Cygnus Arm. He's been testing the barriers since he arrived. No luck so far." Jack watched the creature's futile efforts. The containment fields are designed to adapt to any force applied against them. The harder he pushes, the stronger they become. Patricia gave him a curious look. "You really were an engineer here, weren't you?" "I told you the truth," Jack said quietly. She studied him for a moment longer. "Maybe, but it doesn't change your situation. You're here now, just like the rest of us." The reptilian creature finally exhausted itself and slumped to the floor of its cell. In the sudden quiet, Jack could hear other sounds from around the block. Whispers, clicks, the slithering of appendages across various surfaces. "I need to speak with the human warden," Jack said. "Is there any way to request a meeting?" Patricia laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Warden Harris doesn't do meetings with inmates. He addresses us through Sentinel, if at all." A soft chime sounded throughout the cell block. The transparent walls began to dim. "Recreation period ending," Sentinel announced. "All prisoners return to standard containment." "Wait," Jack said quickly before their connection was cut off. "How many other humans are there in Abyssal?" "Not many," Patricia replied as the wall between them began to turn opaque. "Maybe 5 that I know of. We're rare out here." The walls returned to their solid white state, and Jack was alone again. 5 humans among hundreds of alien prisoners. That meant humans were either exceptionally law-abiding in the galaxy, or exceptionally rare. Jack suspected the latter. During his next meal, Jack discovered something interesting. The delivery drone had a slight wobble in its hovering pattern. A technical flaw he recognized from the testing phase. The stabilization gyros needed recalibration. It was a minor issue, but it told Jack something important. Maintenance was falling behind schedule. As an engineer, he had calculated that Abyssal would need constant upkeep to maintain optimal function. If minor flaws were already appearing, after just a few days it suggested the prison wasn't operating with a full technical staff. The next time the walls became transparent, Jack ignored the other inmates and focused on the corridor itself. He noticed other small issues: a flickering light panel, a slight discoloration on one of the security doors, a delay in the response time of a surveillance drone. When Patricia's cell became visible again, Jack moved to the edge of his barrier, closest to her. "The prison is understaffed," he said without preamble. "The maintenance cycles are falling behind." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "And how does that help us?" "Systems under stress develop predictable failure patterns," Jack explained. "If I can predict where and when those failures will occur, we might find an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" Patricia asked, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "To contact someone who will listen. To prove I don't belong here." Patricia studied him for a long moment. "You still think you're getting out?" "I have to believe that." She shook her head. "Even if you could prove it was a mistake, the Coalition doesn't admit errors. Once you're in Abyssal, you're here for life. That's the point of this place. No appeals, no reviews, no second chances." Before Jack could respond, a commotion broke out several cells down. A being composed of what looked like liquid metal was passing something through the energy barrier to the prisoner across the corridor, a feat that should have been impossible. Alarm sirens blared throughout the block. The transparent walls instantly became solid again as security drones rushed to the disturbance. "Contraband exchange detected in Section 12, Sentinel announced. "Lockdown protocols initiated." Jack's cell began to move. The entire cubicle room detached from its position and slid along hidden tracks in the floor. Through the momentary gaps between sections, Jack caught glimpses of other cells also being relocated. This was standard procedure, randomly rearranging cells to prevent inmates from forming long-term alliances or planning coordinated actions. Jack had helped design the system. When the movement stopped and the walls became transparent again, Jack found himself in a different part of the prison. Patricia was no longer next to him. Instead, his new neighbor was a human man with close-cropped, gray hair and a weathered face. "New to the block?" the man asked, his voice carrying a slight accent Jack couldn't place. "Not exactly, just relocated," the man nodded. "They shuffle us around whenever anything happens. I'm Alan Matthews." "Jack Turner." Alan studied him with narrow eyes. "Military engineer, right?" "I can tell by your posture." Jack hesitated. "Coalition? Engineering Corps. How did you know?" "I was Space Marines for 20 years before taking a private security contract. You learn to spot military training." Alan leaned closer to the barrier. "Word gets around, even in here. You're the one who claims he helped build this place." Jack tensed. "Where did you hear that?" "Relax. Information is currency in Abyssal. I trade in it." Alan glanced around before continuing. "There's a small group of us, humans and a few friendly species, who share information. Helps us survive." "Is Patricia part of this group?" Alan's expression revealed nothing. "Maybe. Why don't you tell me your story and I'll decide if it's worth sharing with the others." Jack considered his options. He needed allies, but revealing too much could be dangerous. Still, Alan seemed to already know the basics. "It was a system error during final implementation," Jack explained. "I was completing the quantum containment field calibrations when a power fluctuation triggered an emergency lockdown. Sentinel identified me as an inmate instead of staff. And no one noticed you were missing. According to the transport logs, I was on board the last ship out. Someone made a clerical error." Alan nodded slowly. "So what's your plan?" "Find a way to contact the human warden directly." "If I can just explain the situation." "Won't work," Alan interrupted. "Harris is a bureaucrat. He follows protocols to the letter." Then I need to find another way, Jack said firmly. Alan studied him for a moment longer, then seemed to come to a decision. Maybe there is one. But first you need to meet the others. If your engineering knowledge is as good as I think it is, you might be exactly what we've been waiting for. The lights in the cell block dimmed, signaling the end of the interaction period. As the walls began to turn opaque, Alan gave Jack a meaningful look. Tomorrow, during maintenance cycle, watch for the sign. The walls solidified, leaving Jack alone once more. But for the first time since his arrival at Abyssal, he felt something close to hope. Jack woke to the sound of a low hum passing through his cell. The maintenance cycle had begun. This was the time when Sentinel's attention was divided as it directed repair drones throughout the prison. Jack sat up on his bed, alert and watching for whatever sign Alan had mentioned. After a few minutes, the light in his cell flickered 3 times in quick succession. That had to be it. But what was he supposed to do in response? Jack examined his cell carefully. During his time as an engineer, he had included emergency manual overrides in many systems, fail-safes that only the design team knew about. If Alan and his group had discovered one of these, he ran his fingers along the seam where the wall met the floor. There, almost invisible, was a small indentation that shouldn't have been there. Jack pressed it firmly. A tiny panel slid open in the floor, revealing a small communication device no bigger than his thumbnail. Jack picked it up carefully and placed it in his ear. "Turner, can you hear me?" Alan's voice was barely audible. "Yes," Jack whispered. "How is this possible? The cells are supposed to block all unauthorized communications. Let's just say we have friends in unexpected places. Listen carefully, we don't have much time. During the next meal delivery, there will be a momentary power fluctuation in your cell. The containment field will weaken for exactly 3 seconds. You need to be ready to pass through the opening when the food drone enters." Jack's pulse quickened. "And then what?" "Follow the maintenance shaft to junction 12B. Patricia will meet you there. She'll bring you to us." "Sentinel will detect my absence immediately," Jack pointed out. "We've arranged a distraction in the high-security wing. It should buy you about 10 minutes before the system realizes you're gone." Jack wanted to ask more questions, but the communication device gave a soft beep and went silent. He slipped it back into the hidden compartment and closed the panel. Hours passed as Jack waited for the meal delivery. He tried to appear calm, knowing that Sentinel monitored behavior patterns for signs of unusual activity. Inside, his mind was racing. Who were these people? How had they discovered the emergency overrides? And more importantly, could he trust them? Finally, the familiar sound of the meal drone approached. Jack positioned himself near the entrance point, his muscles tense and ready. As the wall began to open, the lights in his cell dimmed slightly, the promised power fluctuation. The containment field that normally prevented escape shimmered and weakened. Jack didn't hesitate. As the drone entered with his meal tray, he slipped past it through the narrow opening. The corridor outside was empty, the security drones presumably responding to whatever distraction had been arranged. Jack moved quickly to a maintenance panel in the wall. He removed the cover and squeezed into the narrow shaft beyond. The space was tight, designed for repair drones rather than humans, but Jack managed to navigate through the darkness, counting junctions as he went. At junction 12B, a hand reached out to grab his arm. Jack nearly cried out before recognizing Patricia in the dim emergency lighting. "Quiet," she whispered. "We have 7 minutes left. Follow me." She led him through a maze of maintenance tunnels. Jack realized they were moving through the space between the prison's outer hull and the inner containment structure, an area that was supposed to be inaccessible to inmates. "How did you find these passages?" Jack asked as they crawled through a particularly narrow section. "We didn't," Patricia replied over her shoulder. "He did." They emerged into a small chamber that appeared to be a forgotten storage room. 3 people waited there: Alan Matthews, a tall woman with dark skin and close-cropped hair, and a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. "You made it," Alan said. "Good. Meet Dr. Lisa Woods, exobiologist, and Ben Harmon, former salvage pilot." Jack nodded to each of them. How long have you all been here? I've been here 6 months, Lisa said. Ben almost a year, Alan about 3 months, and you've met Patricia. And you've been working together? How? Ben adjusted his glasses. That would be thanks to our other partner. A section of the wall slid open, and Jack stared in shock as another figure entered the room. It was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin was pale blue, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move. Its eyes were large and completely black. This is Relkan, Alan explained. He's a siren communication specialist. The prison wasn't designed to contain his species because until recently the Coalition didn't know they existed. The alien nodded in greeting. Your containment systems are impressive, Engineer Turner, but they have certain blind spots. Jack struggled to process this new information. You're saying the sirens can bypass our security? Not entirely, Relkan replied. But we can create small disruptions in your communication networks, enough to establish limited contact between cells. We've been gathering information for months, Lisa added. Mapping the prison systems, identifying weaknesses, building a network of allies among the less hostile inmates. But why? Jack asked. What's the end goal? The humans exchanged glances before Alan spoke. Originally, it was just about survival. Humans are rare in this sector, and we needed to look out for each other. But then we started noticing things. What kinds of things? Jack asked. Patricia leaned forward. Inconsistencies. Prisoners arriving who don't match any known criminal profiles. Staff movements that don't align with standard prison protocols. We think there's something else happening in Abyssal, Lisa said quietly. Something beyond a simple prison operation. Ben pulled out a makeshift data pad. I've been tracking the power usage patterns. There are massive energy drains from the central core that can't be explained by normal containment functions. Jack frowned. The core houses the main research labs. They were designed for studying ways to better contain dangerous species. Or to study the species themselves, Lisa suggested. I've seen inmates taken for what's called medical assessment and returned with surgical marks that have nothing to do with healthcare. A soft alarm sounded from a device on Alan's wrist. Time's up. Sentinel will have processed the security. Logs by now. We need to get you back to your cell, Turner. Wait, Jack said. I still don't understand why you brought me here. Because you built this place, Alan said simply. You know its systems better than anyone, and because we need to know if we can trust you. Trust me for what? Patricia's eyes met his. To help us find out what's really happening in Abyssal, and then to help us escape. Jack felt his heart race. Escape from Abyssal was supposed to be impossible. He had helped design it that way. I just want to clear up the mistake that put me here, Jack said. I don't want to become a fugitive. The mistake might not be what you think, Lisa said quietly. We have reason to believe that some of us are here by design, not by accident. Before Jack could ask what she meant, Relkan raised a hand for silence. Security drones approaching. We must return to our cells. We'll contact you again, Alan told Jack. In the meantime, observe. Look for patterns that don't match the official prison protocols you helped create. Patricia led Jack back through the maintenance tunnels. They moved quickly and in silence until they reached the point where they would need to separate. One more thing, Patricia said. The central control hub. Is there any way to access it without Sentinel knowing? Jack thought for a moment. There's an emergency manual override in Section F, but you'd need administrative credentials to activate it. Patricia smiled. That's our next step then. Get back to your cell. And Jack, welcome to the Resistance. As Jack slipped back into his cell moments before a security sweep, he realized that his situation had become far more complicated than a simple case of mistaken identity. Something was happening in Abyssal, something that wasn't in any of the official plans he had helped design. And now he had to decide whether to focus on clearing his name or uncovering a much larger truth. 2 weeks passed after Jack met the Resistance group. They communicated through the hidden devices, sharing information and planning their next move. Jack used his knowledge of the prison's systems to help map blind spots in Sentinel's surveillance. Meanwhile, Lisa gathered evidence of secret medical experiments on inmates, and Ben continued tracking unusual power fluctuations. During a routine cell inspection, Jack discovered something unexpected, a small data chip hidden in the seam of his new jumpsuit. He waited until after lights out to examine it, using the dim emergency lighting that never fully turned off. The chip contained technical specifications for a section of Abyssal that Jack had never seen before, a hidden research facility beneath the main prison. According to the plans, this area housed laboratories and specialized containment units far more advanced than those in the regular prison. "Did you see the files?" Patricia asked during their next communication. "Yes," Jack replied quietly, careful not to alert Sentinel's audio monitors. "Where did you get them?" "From the newest arrival. He was transferred here yesterday, a human named Frank Davis." Jack nearly dropped the communication device. "Frank Davis, the former warden commander?" "The very same," Alan cut in. "Apparently he's been asking for you." Jack remembered Davis well, a stern, no-nonsense coalition officer who had overseen the early development of Abyssal. He had disappeared 6 months before the prison was completed, supposedly reassigned to another project. "How did he end up as a prisoner?" Jack asked. "He claims he discovered something about Abyssal's true purpose," Patricia explained. "Something that made him a threat to certain people in the coalition." Jack felt a chill. "The hidden research facility." "Exactly," Lisa joined the conversation. "Davis says it's called Project Prometheus. They're not just containing dangerous beings, they're studying them, weaponizing their abilities. And some of us are here because we know too much," Ben added, "or have skills they need." Jack thought about his own situation, an engineer with intimate knowledge of Abyssal systems, supposedly trapped by a random error. It seemed less like coincidence now and more like deliberate planning. "We need to meet with Davis," Jack said. "He might know a way out of here." "Already arranged," Alan replied. "Tomorrow during the system reboot. The Resistance has people in maintenance. They're going to trigger a level 3 diagnostic which will force Sentinel to restart its primary functions for approximately 7 minutes. 7 minutes isn't long," Jack warned. "It's all we have," Patricia said. "Be ready." Next day, precisely at 1500 hours, the lights in all cells flickered and went out. The emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. "System diagnostic in progress," Sentinel announced before going silent. Jack felt his cell door unlock. He pushed it open and stepped into the corridor, where Patricia was already waiting. "This way," she whispered, leading him through a series of maintenance tunnels different from their previous route. They emerged in what appeared to be an old storage area. Alan, Lisa, and Ben were already there, along with Relcon and a new human, an older man with military posture and cold eyes. "Frank Davis." "Turner," Davis acknowledged with a nod. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Likewise, sir," Jack replied. "They're saying you discovered the truth about Project Prometheus." Davis's expression hardened. "More than that. I found out what they're really doing with the research. The Coalition isn't just studying dangerous species, they're creating new weapons, biological agents that combine the worst abilities of the most lethal inmates." "But why?" Lisa asked. "The Coalition already controls most of the known galaxy." "Not all of it," Davis replied. "There are regions beyond the mapped space, entire civilizations that have managed to stay hidden from Coalition influence. One of them reached out to me, showed me evidence of what was happening here. That's why I was arrested." "So Abyssal isn't just a prison," Jack said, the pieces finally coming together. "It's a weapons development facility disguised as a prison. And we're not just inmates," Patricia added. "We're test subjects, or potential researchers." Davis looked directly at Jack. "Your accidental imprisonment was planned. They wanted your engineering expertise but needed to make sure you wouldn't object to the ethics of what they're doing." Jack felt sick. He had helped build what he thought was a necessary containment facility for the galaxy's worst criminals. Instead, he had helped create a laboratory for developing biological weapons. We have 5 minutes left, Ben warned, checking his makeshift timer. Then I'll be brief, Davis said. I have a plan to shut down Abyssal and expose Project Prometheus to the galaxy, but I need your help. All of you. He quickly outlined his strategy. The prison had one critical vulnerability, the cooling system for the central core. If they could cause it to overheat, it would trigger an emergency evacuation protocol, forcing the Coalition to send rescue ships. During the evacuation, we can access the communication array and broadcast the evidence of what's happening here to every major system in the galaxy, Davis explained. But what about Sentinel? Jack asked. It's programmed to prevent exactly this kind of sabotage. That's where you come in, Davis said. You helped write its core directives. You know its limitations better than anyone. Jack thought quickly. There is one possibility. Sentinel's primary directive is to prevent prisoner harm. If we could convince it that the research facility poses an imminent threat to inmates, we'd need proof, Lisa pointed out. Irrefutable evidence that the experiments are harming prisoners. I've been collecting data, Ben said. Power surges, unexplained deaths, mysterious transfers to the medical wing with no returns. And I have access codes that will let us into the central database, Davis added. Together, we might have enough. 1 minute, Ben warned. Davis looked at each of them. This is bigger than our freedom. It's about stopping something that could devastate countless worlds. Are you with me? Jack glanced at the others. Humans from different backgrounds united by circumstance, and Relkan, proof that species could work together even here. He thought about all the beings imprisoned in Abyssal, some deservedly, others perhaps not. And he thought about what the Coalition was doing with the research gathered from them. I'm in, Jack said. The others nodded their agreement. 2 days, Davis said. We'll need to coordinate with all our allies throughout the prison. Relkan, can your people handle the communications? The alien nodded. It will be done. Then, we have a plan, Patricia said as the lights flickered, signaling the end of the diagnostic period. As they all hurried back to their cells, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced since his first day in Abyssal. Purpose. He had helped build this prison, and now he would help expose its true nature. When the cell door locked behind him and Sentinel came back online, Jack sat on his bed with a new resolve. In 2 days, they would attempt the impossible, a prison break from the most secure facility in the galaxy. But more than that, they would reveal the truth about Project Prometheus and the Coalition's secret weapons program. The human who had been accidentally imprisoned would become the key to bringing down the prison he had helped create. Jack Turner, once Prisoner Zero, was now at the center of a resistance that might change the course of galactic history.